Good morning and welcome to the Big Baraza as powered by Sandbox International. Today is day 2 of the Big Baraza and we're pleased to have you join us. If you missed day 1, not to worry, as we shall be sharing the video highlights on our social media channels in the weeks to come. Make sure you have registered for our mailing list in order to receive these and other exciting products from the Sandbox Village experts and our partners. Yesterday was the inaugural launch of the Big Baraza, 25th May 2021. It was also Africa Day. Africa Day commemorates the founding of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union, back in 1963 on the 25th of May. It became the African Union in 2002. To paraphrase a quote from the African Union, the organization was a manifestation of the Pan-African vision for an Africa that was united, free, and in control of its own destiny. The founders recognized that freedom, equality, justice, and dignity were essential objectives for the achievement of the legitimate aspirations of the African peoples, and that there was a need to promote understanding and cooperation that transcended boundaries between African states. This year, the Africa Day theme was Art, Culture, and Heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. At Sandbox, we believe in leveraging on African brilliance and creative power that is seen not only in our history, but also today and in the plans for tomorrow. We see our role in supporting, building, and serving SMEs and entrepreneurs, the backbone of our economies. The art and practice of trade that is rooted in African genius and history influenced the whole world. From the Mutapa Kingdom's trade that stretched from Zimbabwe all the way across to Mozambique, to the city of Gao in West Africa, whose trade routes reached Cairo in North Africa. Africans traversed deserts, rivers, forests, and oceans in pursuit of business solutions for Africa and the world. Think of the Sahara trade route that was part of the original Silk Road, reaching ancient Afghanistan, Iraq, and China. Today, the Big Baraza reaches into this wealth of business genius that is ingrained in us to unearth great solutions for SME businesses today and beyond. This can be seen in how African nations are taking control of their resources and becoming manufacturers, adding value. Ghana with manufacturing chocolate, Ethiopia that is selling branded coffee to China, just 2 examples of giants in their regions. And to complement these steps, we see better governance and business environments as a result of political transitions across the continent. We have an exciting program and lineup of African experts and leaders who live and breathe African excellence in business, especially in the SME and entrepreneurial space. This is your conference, SMEs for SMEs. This is your space, and we want you to use your voice and engage with them. Karibuni nyote.
Welcome to the Big Baraza Day 2. My name is Amani Maranga and I'll be your host for today. I don't know if you were there with us yesterday, but if you were not, oh my, you missed such a wonderful day. But let me first start by acknowledging Mona, who is the head of Ops at the Sandbox and the founder of the AfriWay2 platform, an SME who's just given us that wonderful spoken word about Africa and what we're doing here in Africa. Isn't it a wonderful day in Zamunda or Wakanda or wherever you are? Well, the Big Baraza is here, and this is the second day of the Big Baraza. And let me start by telling you what the Big Baraza is. You see, in this part of the world, in East Africa, but this is something that is usually an occurrence in most parts of Africa. People meet or convene in a social setting to discuss issues of social importance in our village or in our community, sometimes issues of governance and sometimes issues of resources. Now, that in our part of the world, in East Africa, in Kenya, is called a baraza. Now, a baraza could be a small baraza or it could be a big baraza. This is a big baraza. But this is a big baraza to discuss the space of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, the first of its kind ever in this part of the world, in Africa. This is happening yesterday, was happening yesterday and today. And really, it's to bring us together to have authentic, genuine conversations about what's happening in the SME space and where we need to be going in as SMEs in Africa. Why is this important? Because we are the drivers of the African economy. We are the drivers of our local economies. Yesterday, we got a statistic that said 81% of all jobs in this country are created by SMEs. We really are the drivers of the economy. So we need to come together. We need to talk about what the things that affect us and discuss how to move forward. So what happened yesterday? Let me tell you what happened yesterday. Yesterday, we had an opening address. We had an introduction from the CEO of Sandbox, Joram. He'll be coming back today and he'll be talking about the Sandbox a little bit in a short while. But we had an opening address by the CAS of the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth in Kenya. And she mentioned to us some of the things that the government is doing to increase the space for SMEs and for innovation. We had wonderful conversations, notably one with Dr. Gathuru, who gave an authentic story about his SME journey and told us how to thrive and to be resilient in times of crisis, how to lead in times of crisis. We had panel conversations where we talked to regulators and big tech, but we also talked to small businesses, SMEs like us, and we discussed issues about where we should be, how we should be talking and shouting about ourselves. We discussed issues of regulation, tax, and communication. If you were not there, boy, oh boy, you missed something big. But we'll try and make this information available. So what can you expect today? Today it's about scaling. It's about growing. It's about having influence beyond your village, beyond your town, beyond your county, your country, having influence in Africa. That's what we're on about. How do you build your business across borders? How do you start to do business with the free trade areas that have been created in Africa? How do you move from being significant just where you are to being significant across the continent? You know, the Pan-African dream was a dream of our fathers and our forefathers. But I think it's a dream that we, this generation, will actualize. And so you better get strapped in. You're in for a good ride today. I'd like to start by introducing my good friend, the CEO of the Sandbox. His name is Joram Mwinamo. Now, if you haven't met Joram, then you need to change your circle of friends, because this management consultant, coach, and public speaker is passionate about Africa and seeing its people achieve, how people achieve the greatness that is inherent in them, while enabling them to have global influence in business, education, and life in general. This wonderful gentleman has skills in organizational structure, strategy, development, coaching, workshop facilitation, leadership training, and entrepreneurship. He is the founder and brainchild behind the Sandbox, a space that is a one-stop shop, an innovative space that's a one-stop shop supporting SMEs and the only one of its kind globally, which is about to start expanding into the Africa space. He co-founded and grew and eventually exited Wild International and remains a board member of it, leaving it in the hands of a capable successor who was part of our panel yesterday, Chris Odongo. I could say many things about this man, but this is what you need to remember. He is the SME master. And every time you're with him, you're in an SME masterclass. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Give a virtual round of applause to Mr. Joram Mwinamo. Joram, would you join me on stage?
Good morning, Amani.
Good morning, Joram. How are you doing,
Everyone, good. Believe it or not, I was in the wrong room.
No, I believe
I was
you.
a bit
In
lost.
fact, thank you for saying that, because I expect that this wonderful innovation that you brought to us, called the Flows platform, is not easy to use. And so, well, it's easy, but it can be confusing. It's not Zoom. So I understand how you can get into the wrong room. And after your address, I will be also giving people a bit of a lay of the land of this platform. But you know what, Joram, we're very happy that you're here. We're very proud of what you're doing, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Sandbox going into Africa. So please take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Amani. And welcome to everyone for day 2. We are excited to have all of you on board today for yet a very exciting day. And just to set the tone about what the day is going to be like, I would like to talk about several things. I would like to talk about the Sandbox, but more so I would like to talk about Africa. And we call ourselves an innovative economic impact platform for Africa. And why do we say that? Because we have a passion to strengthen African economies through enterprise, development and job creation. We are quite passionate about ensuring that homegrown companies, are able to get the structures that they need, get the branding that they need, get the value addition that they need, the systems, the processes, so that as they grow, they can create jobs for, our African youth in particular. And so as Sandbox, we do have a very big vision. We are looking to reach and grow 600,000 entrepreneurs through 300 Sandboxes across Africa in the next 20 years, who will sustainably create up to 3 million much-needed quality jobs, especially for our youth. And so this is something we are unapologetic about. It is something we are excited about because we know that this is a possibility. There's a lot of opportunity, as you'll be seeing in my presentation a little bit later. But we hope that as we share this vision, that you can also come on board as our fellow Africans, fellow Kenyans, for us to be able to achieve this. Africa has a lot of challenges. We've come from being known as a dark continent, the poster child for, war, disease, and poverty. But things are changing. And we as Sandbox have taken the time to look at what problems can we address as a platform. And 3 things come to mind. Number 1 is just the question of unemployment in Africa. From the AFDB report, there is a number of 140 million youth who are currently unemployed. And this is only a figure that's likely to keep getting worse if we don't tackle it head on. Africa has an average age of just about 19, the entire continent put together. If you're above the age of 40, you're amongst probably the top 10% oldest people on the continent. And so we have a very young population, and that young population is better educated today and will need the jobs that we will create as SMEs. The other thing that we are addressing is also the entrepreneurship success rates. We've seen that a lot of businesses die within their first year, and a certain number also die within the first 5, simply because of how overwhelming it is to build a business within the continent. Sometimes it's due to the harsh environment, sometimes it's due to stringent compliance. But at the end of the day, we are looking at how can we ensure that entrepreneurs succeed more, are able to structure their businesses better, grow and create wealth for themselves. And then the other thing is that intra-Africa trade, compared to the other continents, is quite a low figure. It's just at 17%, compared to Europe, that's at 69%, compared to Asia, that's at 59%, and North America at 31%. And why is this? Why is it so difficult to do business with countries that are right next to us? Why is it so difficult to do business with countries that are simple, drive away? It's because we have challenges with infrastructure, but even bigger, we have challenges with getting to trust and know one another and do trade with one another across the different borders. And so I would like to bring to you, a few opportunities that are there within the African continent. And this I have picked from a document called the $1 Trillion Investment Framework for Africa, which is in support of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area implementation. This was done by the Afro Champions Initiatives and the African Union Secretariat collectively. And it presents some mind-boggling numbers. And I just want you to take that journey with me down these numbers. Number one, when it comes to feeding the people of Africa, can you believe that the annual food import bill across the continent will be $110 billion by 2025? Why is it that the continent that has the largest amount of arable land is importing that amount of food from continents that have snow covered, with rocks and all sorts, and some are even deserts? How is it that as a continent we are unable to feed ourselves, and yet all 40% of the remaining arable land is actually in Africa? By 2030, the agribusiness sector in Africa is estimated to reach $1 trillion annually as an opportunity. I know these numbers may seem mind-boggling, and you're asking yourself, where is this opportunity? As we go along, I will keep repeating. If you see the Chinese, the Europeans, the Americans running here, it is because they see these numbers and they know what these numbers mean. But we as Africans don't seem to understand exactly what this means as opportunities. But let's look beyond food and see what other opportunities are there. Moving people and goods across Africa, estimated to be a $200 billion opportunity worth of trade carried by the region's trunk road network. Some places don't have roads, and that's why we have a challenge in terms of moving goods, from country to country. But that's what is estimated as an opportunity. Our aviation sector contributes $72.5 billion to the African economy. And, that's an $80 billion opportunity that is just staring us in the face. Other numbers, by 2030, the combined consumer and business spending is estimated to reach $4 trillion, not billion, but $1 trillion across the African continent. Also, projected consumer spending is estimated by 2030 to reach $2.5 trillion. If we look at how our cities are going to grow, by 2030, and don't forget, this is just 9 years away, it is estimated that we will have 17 cities across the continent that will have more than 5 million residents. And we are going to have at least 52 cities that will have at least 1 million people. By 2030, the number of Africans living in cities is projected to grow to 50%. And this is, probably a timeline that few of us will see. But Lagos is projected to become the largest city in the world with an estimated population of 88.3 million people by the year 2100, okay? Not just in Africa, but we are talking about the world. Today, there are about, I think, 25 or 28 million. But what do these numbers mean when it comes to opportunities for us? When it comes to merchandise trade, Africa's total merchandise trade stood at $997 billion as at 2018. Our import value is at $48 billion. When you look at pharmaceuticals from outside of Africa, we import a whole $14 billion worth of pharmaceuticals. And Sub-Saharan's apparel and footwear market is valued at $31 billion. Who looks at these numbers and salivates? Unfortunately, not the Africans. Unfortunately, again, it's the Chinese, it's the Europeans, it's the Americans who look at these numbers and see a very lucrative opportunity for the future. And they're trying to do everything possible to come and tap into these opportunities. So where are the African SMEs and entrepreneurs when it comes to these particular opportunities? Many do not even know that these opportunities exist. Many of us have not even come across this particular report, which I'll be sharing in the handout section immediately after this. But we have to become the kind of people who dream big, see these numbers, and prepare ourselves to take up these opportunities. Because if we don't do it, somebody else will. And what's our plan as Sandbox? We are planning to tap into that opportunity for sure. We have been running Sandbox, the village formula, for the last 1 year. But this year, we shall be adding something else into the mix, which is Sandbox Capital, which has been the missing ingredient in this whole village formula to turbocharge what it is that we are looking at tapping into as far as those opportunities are concerned. The opportunity that I just showed you will require financing, but they'll also require scalable businesses that will be able to tap into those opportunities and serve them across the continent. So we've put in place a very robust board. We have a separate board for the Sandbox Capital as well, but we will also be looking to launch virtual sandboxes across the continent. And this year and next year, first, within Kenya, we are looking at setting up virtual sandboxes in Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret, and Kisumu by the end of this year. We've already identified individuals who will help us to set up in those locations and begun the process of identifying professionals like ourselves here at the Nairobi Sandbox who can make this a reality. We will then, after setting up the virtual sandboxes, be looking to set up the physical sandboxes thereafter. And when it comes to East Africa, we are also looking to set up virtual sandboxes in Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda, in the capital cities. Again, we have identified the individuals who will make this a reality, and we are quite excited and looking forward to establishing these virtual sandboxes and thereafter set up the physical ones that will enable us to replicate the same thing in those countries. We're not just looking at these virtual sandboxes as tools of serving the people in those countries, but also as connecting bridges in between the capitals, in between the different countries, to deal with the issue of trust. As we are looking to tap into these Pan-African opportunities, we are building a platform that will enable you to get the data, to get the professionals who can help you tap into those local opportunities, and basically to create bridges across these countries that will enable this Pan-African trade to flow and grow in greater numbers than the 17% that we saw earlier. We will definitely be looking at going beyond this to cover the entire continent, as I said in our vision, but we are quite excited to do this because it means that by the time we have the big Baraza next year, we're not just going to be looking at a Kenyan affair, but we are really going to be looking at an East African affair. And we invite you to join us in this journey. We are quite excited to put this in place, and we are hoping that the people who attend this Baraza will also be equally ambitious and excited about these Pan-African opportunities. And throughout the day, we'll be talking to entrepreneurs who are actually tapping into Pan-African opportunities. We'll be talking to people who understand the African Free Continental Trade Area better. And you can be able to start making your plans and seeing how you can grow and tap into this. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. We look forward to having a wonderful Baraza today.
Wow, Joram, what an inspiring session you've given us. And I mean, it's always amazing to see vision, you know, and to see, and I've seen with you vision come alive. So not just dreams, but an actual vision come alive. And what an experience. Thank you so much for that, Joram. And thank you for those numbers that we should be salivating at as well. I definitely look forward to increasing my level of local saliva, if you know what I mean. All right, taking Africa and the world. Is it possible for SMEs to take Africa and the world? That's the conversation we're going to have. And I'm very privileged to have three fantastic panelists to just bring this conversation to us and tell us how, first, they've been able to take their businesses to the world, and secondly, whether we'll have a little conversation as to whether it is possible, actually possible, to take these businesses to the world and learning from them. Now, in my panel, I have three wonderful human beings. I have Navalayo Osembo, who is the CEO and founder of Enda, a made in Kenya running shoe brand that creates jobs, invests in local communities, and spurs economic development through exports. You must have seen this in some of the news because this shoe is getting a lot of good press. She is a graduate of the London School of Economics and has worked internationally, including in the US, in the UK, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya, where she utilizes her diverse skills as an accountant, a lawyer, a risk manager, and an international developer. Prior to creating Enda, Navalayo started a sports academy in Bungoma, Western Kenya, to provide sports prodigies from disadvantaged backgrounds access to much-needed professional training without compromising their education. She is going to be alongside Alex Orie and Philip from IPE, whom I'll introduce a little later. But I am so excited to have you, Navalayo, here because I'm a size 10 and I'm a great shoe ambassador. And, I'm just looking forward to that, that shoe box that you're going to send to me. I can't wait to have it. And so as you give your presentation about your business, I'm looking forward to you asking me about my address. Ladies and gentlemen, put together your hands for Miss Navalayo Osembo. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing me, and thanks to everyone who made time to be here. I always value time, so I appreciate when people take time to listen. So I would say thank you so much for the introduction. In terms of Enda, I'm assuming if you know Kiswahili, you know Enda means go, and we named the company Go because when you see how people support sports, especially when their team is just about to win or is doing something great, everybody will be shouting Enda, 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 and so when we were thinking of what's the perfect name to name this business, that's why we decided to name Enda. So at Enda, we basically work with Kenyan athletes to design and develop running shoes for runners around the world. The reason why we do this is multifold. One is the opportunity for Kenya to take part in the global footwear industry is massive. Like, it's one of the biggest industries, especially in footwear. That's performance running. But then we always come in from participatory and not an ownership perspective. So you'll find that a few athletes will win prize money. But then again, if you look at the pyramid of athletes, only a few are able to kind of stand out. There's still so many good athletes who are not able to get to that perspective. And then the other thing was also, growing up, my parents come from a place around Eldoret. And so it's been a place where I've been around, but never really taking it into consideration. But then you do grow up hearing stories about athletes who basically were making a lot of money, and then they didn't make a lot of money, and towards the end of their careers, they were destitute. And I think at some point I was like, why should it be that these global champions end up living destitute lives in an industry that is making a lot of money from them? So that was another motivation. And our final motivation was kind of studying international development. And I think I went there with so much naivety, trying to figure out, okay, so let's make this world work. And then I felt as though the Africa or Kenya that was being described was very different from the one that I had lived in. I think it made me question poverty. What is poverty? Is it material wealth? Is it good roads? Is it, there's elements where, yes, I didn't grow up with much, but I had a fantastic childhood. So who gets to decide that I have a negative story just based on how we grew up or the things we grew up with? And so coming out of studying international development and really thinking about how Africa was represented as this place with no hope, I was like, nah, that's not what I know. I know that we didn't have much, but we had a good childhood and we had a lot of stuff. So how can we basically take that narrative, and so that it's not someone telling me about, oh, you're so corrupt and you're all this and all that. And it's not to say we are not, but it's to say that there are parallel stories coexisting, one of which, yes, we have problems, so does everybody around the world, but on the other hand, we also have opportunities to showcase. So that's the mentality I basically came back home with after my postgraduate studies. And I was super determined to create something that was not only taking advantage of sports, but also creating a social impact. Social impact, as I said, is important for a couple of reasons. One, as I said, few athletes bear a lot of communal pressure to basically support everyone. And then there's also the element of appreciating history. The history of development has always been extractive, especially if you look at Africa and Kenya. It's always been, let's take resources, let's take them somewhere else, make them, bring them back, and basically sell them at a higher price. And so that hurts us as a country because it means we are a net importer. And that means, like, it has so many implications when you think about what that means when almost everything from the toothpicks to our tissue paper is being imported. And so the social impact was, why not create an industry in Kenya? Because we do have the expertise, right? Like, we have the runners who from 1968 Olympics have been crushing it, but why not use their skills to create something? And so that was the decision, to create ENDA and try to establish making running shoes in Kenya. It hasn't been that much of an easy journey. I think when you start a business, you start with so much optimism of, I definitely want to do this. But we really quickly realized the challenges and the capacity and capital challenges that it takes to start a manufacturing entity in Kenya. And so one of them being capital. For you to start a factory, it takes a lot. And not only do you have the infrastructure, you have to think about the operational costs day to day. You have to pay people, you have to pay electricity, you have to pay all these things. And so as a result of that, we quickly realized we were not able to do it by ourselves. And hence, we decided to be contract manufacturers. So contract manufacturing is essentially working with an existing factory and basically using their downtime so that if they're able to produce extra capacity, they can be able to open the doors to other people who may not have those resources to start. And I think that has been so instrumental in making ENDA happen. And I wish we could do that in other industries. So, for example, I don't need to own a tea factory to create a tea brand. I can basically create my own brand and work with the tea factory to produce for me. So I think that's the way to go. And so we've been contract manufacturing. And when we started, we were 0% made in Kenya because we quickly realized there's a reason why this industry didn't exist before. And so we had to do a lot of investments. That's at the factory level, at the staff training level. We basically had to do all that investment to bring people up to par so that when we put our shoes when you look at them on a wall, when you go to a running store, they would usually put the shoes on a wall. You want to say that the ENDA running shoe is just as good as any other running shoe that is out there. And so that's what we've been doing progressively, investing, co-working with the factory to invest in machinery, to upskill the workers, and to make more and more of that process, bring it from Asia to Kenya so that we can make those shoes in Kenya. We still have a target of making the shoes 100%. We are on our way there, but very optimistic about the future. Right now, we have two products. One is called the 10, and the other one is called the Lavatet. So the 10 is a lightweight trainer. It's ideal for shorter runs. The Lavatet is for longer runs. And the key thing about our shoes is not just about a product you're wearing, it's also sharing Kenya's history and running culture. Because you realize when you ask someone in the streets, who are best runners, they'll probably tell you Eliud Kipchoge. You might get a David Rudisha, and then it's blank. And I think that's a huge travesty for a nation that has such a huge history. And that's why we take care and try to make sure that our shoes aren't just like the whole design philosophy has to pay tribute to running, to our history, and to make people feel good, which is essentially the way. If you look at African history and oral literature, it was always about something that tells a message. And so we hope that our brand will not only be a running shoe brand, but it will also be a brand that reminds people about their history, their culture, makes them proud of where they come from, and also change the image of Kenya as not just a place where you get, people still believe stuff from Africa is not good quality, and we're here to challenge that and saying, who says, here's an equally good product, we can do it, we just need the opportunities and the resources. So that's a brief overview about ENDA and what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Navalayo, for such an inspiring story, and thank you for what you're doing both for our country, for our country's narratives, and for our feet. And now I know why I don't own a pair of running shoes, because I only run from poverty. But we'll discuss that a little later. Stick around. We're going to have a discussion with you in a bit, but I'd like to invite Mr. Philip Nyamoya, who is the CEO of iPay, to come and share a little about his business. Philip, please feel free to unmute yourself and go. Take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Amani, for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here in the Sandbox Big Baraza. My name is Philip Nyamoya. I'm the managing director at iPay. iPay is a payment services provider. We are a local company, born and bred, fully Kenyan, fully African. And we offer SMEs, corporates, you name it, even the man on the street, really, the ability to be able to receive payments across different platforms, whether it's mobile money, mobile banking, Visa, MasterCard, credit and debit card acquiring, QR code acquiring, PDQ acquiring, using those PDQ machines. That's what we do. And we began our journey in 2010 as a product of a different technology company, but our board decided to separate the two companies in 2010. Actually, the journey began in 2007 with the advent of M-Pesa, and we began to ask ourselves then, what can we do with this technology? Because Africa is obviously not, we're not, how do you say it? We're not a card first or a bank first economy like you would find maybe in South Africa or in North Africa perhaps, or in Europe really. And we asked ourselves, what can we do? So we were already thinking about M-Pesa 2.0 at that time. And that being the case, incidentally, I was doing my master's around the same time. I have a master's in software engineering from the University of Liverpool. And my thesis was actually on mobile commerce and its effect in a third world context. How can we use mobile technology to actually leapfrog some of the technological milestones that maybe the West has gone through and whatnot. And so we came up with this technology. So the very first version was actually, something I'd used for an academic dissertation. And I'm happy that we were actually able to turn it into a product that is relevant to Africa, relevant to our context, and makes a lot of sense. So there is some solid work that has gone into our solution. And in 2010, we built it out and created it as a standalone product. That being the case, as Navalayo has mentioned, and I think everybody here can attest to the fact, entrepreneurship is not a walk in the park. It's tough. And I think just the added fact that we're in Africa makes it that much tougher, just makes it that much harder. But I think we being born and bred here, having lived in these broken economies that we have, there's still a silver lining. There's still something we can do. And why I say that is, even before I come to the rest of the company, I just wanted to just throw that out there. It's because so many of my friends live outside Kenya. Most of my friends, most of the people I grew up with, and I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm just as ordinary as Navalayo has mentioned. But I look at most of the people I grew up with from the estate, from the Mta, they're not here. They're either in America, they're in Europe, they're in Australia, they're in much more developed economies, contributing to those economies. It's not that they're just doing nothing or on the fringes of society, no. And I ask myself, when will Africa ever change? If we all go, not that we shouldn't, and I'm not saying don't take an opportunity, but, go to come back, go to bring the value here, because this is the last frontier. This is where I believe you can make it and really make it big with a lot of positive social impact that will raise up so many other people and so many other businesses together. And that's where wealth is created. So anyway, long story short, iPay was launched. We began our business. We began developing products. And right now we have a stable of products. We offer businesses the ability to collect payments both on the internet, online, or at the point of sale in your shops. That means that we are a one-stop shop. You come to us, we'll give you the ability to collect M-Pesa payments, Airtel Money, Equitel, EasyPay, Vuma from KCB, Visa, MasterCard, UnionPay, American Express, both online, Or if you don't have the ability to set up an online shop, we'll give you one. We have a platform where shops can actually, or businesses, hustles, can actually come and set up and create value for themselves without having to go through the entire process of setting up a website, and that whole rigmarole. So we take that pressure off you. We also have an invoicing solution. So that means if you want to bill your customers wherever they are in the world, and send them a branded invoice that comes from you, we are able to give you that technology to allow you to acquire payments in multiple currencies as well. We also offer merchants the ability to disburse payments. So it's not just about receiving payments, that's just one leg of the payments journey, but also, paying out, because businesses actually support other businesses. Either you are paying for wages, or you are paying, and these wages perhaps are going to mobile wallets or they're terminating to bank accounts. We will be able to support you with that kind of technology and to do so easily and quickly. Finally, I have quite a lot to talk about, and I think we'll do so maybe as we go along. But we are also directly connected at the PesaLink switch, and that means that we play at the same level with the banks. And that means that we're able to offer preferential rates in terms of settlement to banks. So PesaLink does up to 1 million less one. So we'll be happy to have conversations around that. We also have an exhibition booth, and we'll be more than excited to have further engagements with you. The rest of our team is there waiting to engage with you and would love to talk to you. Finally, lastly, just before I wind up, I just wanted to say one last thing. We have just launched a new product called iPay Kopesha, and it's a working capital solution. So that means if you come on board as an iPay merchant, we actually expose opportunities for you to access working capital, short-term lending, short-term loans. Is it for 10 days, 15 days, 30 days credit, some up to 6 months. We're able to offer you that in partnership with very strong partners that we work with. You just come to our dashboard and you're able to access a loan based on your turnover. How much are you trading through our systems? And that's something which we are excited about. I believe it will also help just unlock credit opportunities to African SMEs as we go along. Amani, I could go on until tomorrow, but I think I'll just pass it over there. Thank you.
Philip, such a passionate pitch about your business, and well done. Again, one of the businesses I've been privileged to see from scratch, and you've done very well. You've done very well with iPay. Guys, if you want to see, the guy, he said the truth. Just ordinary man, worked hard, over 17 years experience in the field of product development, financial services, technology, marketing, and business development. Of course, you can tell he has a good brain. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science with first-class honors, no less, from JKUAT. And he also has, as he mentioned, the master's degree in software engineering from the University of Liverpool. And if you didn't know that you are getting smart brains, now you know. And if, as a business, you need to get in touch with iPay, so go to the exhibition booth, get in touch with them. Thank you, Philip, for that. And stick around. We're going to be talking to you shortly in a bit as I introduce the next man. The next man is Mr. Alex Rourier. Now, Alex, again, privileged to have known him for a while and privileged to know what his business does. He runs Moran Capital. Moran Capital is, he'll be talking about it, but let me say something about Alex. He provides deep, meaningful, and practical insights into the challenges and strategies of developing a sustained culture of corporate and personal success across markets and across market timeframes, peppered investments, opportunities, and regional barriers. And I've heard him speak, and it brings this down to a level you and I can very easily understand. There's more than 2 decades of experience in developing successful wealth management strategies for individuals and for corporate clients in local and global markets. Basically, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you want to be wealthy, you need to talk to Alex. Alex, take it away, man.
Thank you, Amani. Thank you very much. And yes, Alex Rourier, I'm the CEO of Moran Capital. And thankfully, we have been in the process of rebranding as well. Our clients and what their needs are. And we are responding in that way, and have found a way to obviously do that. We are in the process of a rebrand from working with Sandbox and going into very rigorous research. So I'm glad to be here to share some of the things that we've observed over the last 2 decades or so. And just as an introduction, yes, I've been in the financial industry for the last 20 years, so decades I can count. But more importantly, serving successfully people who, we can say we have traction on that space of wealth management, because we have seen the change in families, we have change in businesses, and that for me is my greatest passion. You can change big numbers, but if it doesn't change individuals, then it's not as effective. So I'll just share some few slides just to take us through something that wow, okay, just a quick one. Maybe I will go into my screen here. And I will be talking about building your wealth, through building your business better, to build your wealth better. I truly hope, Amani, you can see my screen.
I can see your screen. Maybe you put it on presentation mode.
Yes,
at
I
the
will
bottom.
do that.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so really, your business is a key aspect of your own livelihood, as well as many people's livelihoods. And our advisory services towards individuals and corporates run around the wealth management space, the investment advisory, because there are some people who obviously don't want to delve too much into their personal space. They want just execution, as compared to us looking at where are your assets today and what are your goals and how do we bridge this gap. It's something that we can get into very intensely, very intimately, and come out with a very clear strategy. But in terms of smaller chunks developed over the process, you can do investment advisory. This is where can I place my investments. I got some retrenchment which has happened over COVID, a very unfortunate space. Where can I invest and be able to get some immediate income? Or my business has been impacted in terms of my core business. Where can I place investments to generate income to run my OPEX, my operational expenditure? Is a very critical space. Risk management is just looking at those things that I need to do to defend the asset that I'm developing. Private equity is how do I get into other businesses without me having to run and operate necessarily, but I can benefit from the growth of the business without it being purely debt. And private banking obviously is international exposure into very concierge spaces of getting premier banking services from a global perspective. So those are some of the services we provide, and these services can be provided from people who are starting, to people who are starting, corporates which are starting out, all the way to really conglomerate businesses. In my background, of course, I've come from the audit and financial services sector. I've done my master's in finance, worked for all these corporates. So we are able to handle, various rigor that, our clients can give. So primarily what you're doing as business, you're looking at how do you grow your personal net worth. And this is something that we've always looked at from a client perspective, and also ourselves as a business. We look at our active income, and that means our business and for our staff, the employment income, but also, the passive income they can receive. A lot of people are stuck on the active income where they are fully engaged in their own business, that they don't have a passive income such that if their business was hit by a shock like the pandemic has done, there's no way to have a fallback and their business will be dilapidated. It will be completely out of the market. And we've seen this quite a lot. And the question is, nobody had highlighted the fact that, this market cycles could wipe out wealth. So what should you do to protect your most important asset, which is your human capital? So to protect that human capital, to protect your business, you need some alternative source of income, which is your passive income, whether it is in real assets, your real estate and those kind of things, your paper assets, mutual funds, bonds, whether they're government or corporate, shares, alternative investments, derivatives. Who gives you information as to how to structure your portfolio so that you can have a regular income from these areas where you are not a professional necessarily, but you have somebody who's a professional and giving you, proper advice towards achieving your goals, but more importantly, towards growing your net worth, because at a start, you might start by leveraging off debt. But then even as you grow, your net worth is a matter of your assets less that debt which you have. So just checking what you owe other people and what is really yourself, that is your net worth, and that's a wealth that you can sit on and be happy to pass on to your next generation. So the question is, who is helping you do that? And we also analyze what is our own growth. And to do that, of course, we've looked at the African context for a long time. It's a large market. Of course, by 2030, and some of the statistics that we got from Joram support this information. 1.7 billion is, a respectable number, 16-20% of the world population in the next, 8, 9, 10 years. 40% of the natural resources of the world. I mean, you cannot ignore this fact. You have a young and growing population demographic. So when we are thinking of doing investments as a business and the people we should be advising for the future, because we are creating sustainability in our business the next 100 years, the next JP Morgans in this market, the next, big businesses in this continent. Where will this support come from? Of course, this is very important. 19 to 30 years population is 60% of our total population. We have a rapidly growing workforce due to the education, that one very well, sitting in Kenya, sitting anywhere. You now have a lot of people coming out of university. Where will they be engaged? Where will they invest? What kind of businesses will they get into? This is a space we need to be involved in to make sure that when we tap into this space, when we tap into this client group, then we can know the business will be carried over the next 100 years very easily, because the generations will have seen success and they want to hand over that success through companies that have taken them through very well. We also have this fastest urbanization rate in the world. Now, this is amazing because this is faster than China and India. And what that means is a lot of investment is coming into Africa. People can now access consumer data because the urbanization means people are coming closer to town, people have more information, and those companies structuring products and who want to access this consumer information now can get it. And therefore, you find Africa is very attractive. We have accelerating technological change. We've just heard iPay talking about those kind of things that they are doing. And the fact that, if you look at M-Pesa and its success, Safaricom, it means there's a lot of things happening that will connect the whole of Africa and make business easier to do. Not to mention, obviously, that we have a trading bloc, which is CFTA, removing a lot of the barriers that we have previously been seeing. And for that, we were very attracted to this space. And for us, one of the key points was that we obviously looked at this data. And this on the right here, you can see some big numbers. But what does this mean? We are looking at, in a few years, we'll have at least 2 trillion, 3 trillion in assets in GDP in Africa. Where is this money going? Because that is the question. Where is this money going? Is it going to end up with us, or who's going to end up with this money? Every year we are having this money come through the economy. Where is it going? It's going in these services and manufacturing spaces. But what are these people doing with the money? This was the question we were asking ourselves. Will we be left with this wealth? As you can see, there are guys in food and beverage making $850 billion every year. Where is this money going? If I ignore Africa, am I playing in that space? If I want to create wealth for my investors, am I in that space? So one of the steps we took, obviously, was to go into the bigger market, which is Nigeria. We've also played in East Africa. We are now looking at the rest of Sub-Saharan as well as the Central Africa region. And the reality is we have, from moving from East Africa to Western Africa, we've seen probably a 50 times growth because Nigeria is an enormous market. Obviously, we understood the challenges of that market. We understood the regulatory risks, instability. You could see if we go into that market, we need to open. These are guys who spend and do big things. So your distribution cost for investments and wealth advisory would be very high because the rental cost is very expensive in Nigeria. The political risks are there. You saw, last year there was a bit of push and shove. There's, a lot of issues. The roads, the traffic jam is amazing. The story of Africa. If you go to Lagos, the traffic jam it makes Nairobi look like a drop in the ocean. Electricity supply problems there, and therefore communication is a major challenge. There is a lot of problems going on there that we know. There is information gaps in terms of research that we can actually use. We are talking of multiple currencies. These are challenges everybody would see. We have the Naira, and if you are investing internationally, you have, to invest in dollar. There are exchange tariffs and, currency challenges to move money out of Nigeria into investment. So we have to think of these things. And most, Nigerians think of big brands. When you go to Congo, they think of big brands. And then you're coming from a space where we are now also dealing with fairly informal traders. We have issues around anti-money laundering. And those kind of things. So when people see Africa and you want to invest internationally, everybody is sensitive. Is this money legit? So all the banks want extra paperwork. The capital markets are not that developed to move money. Yes, they are big, but they are not yet developed to do the sophisticated things. And, for some of these markets, as you can hear, we are a Kenyan company dealing in Nigeria. Of course, by the time they buy our story that Kenya can hub financial services in Africa, a challenge. Where are you coming from? You're a small country. But, we looked at it in terms of what's our strategy. We've worked around digital footprint. We did a top-down, bottom-up strategy. And we did, in order to enter the market, we've worked digitally, created a hub and worked with partners to localize our business because you can hear my English. If I try to speak any pidgin English, I will fail flat. So, it's a market which I may not be able to access very easily. But also from our regional strategy was to look at this is a consumption-driven economy. So whatever investments you give, have to have a very quick turnaround on investment. And we can speak a lot of things around how our company did the margin expansions and those kind of things that we really look at for businesses. And we help our clients to obviously work through that, as well as what technological support do you have on our digital wealth strategies and shared service centers to reduce cost on the business. Finally, of course, Sandbox has helped us with professional services and to help our sales strategies. So this has helped our business be able to access these markets very easily. And our strategies on how to get into those markets, reducing how much capital you invest upfront before you get to understand the market. There's a lot of strategies that we can share so that every one of our clients and also for ourselves entering these new markets, we are very clear that we have to have a strategy which is actually quite sustainable. So this has been the backbone of our success. And we hope that, over time, as clients come to us, as you come to us, we can share deeply and with a lot of insight as to how that can impact your own business and your own wealth. So thank you very much for listening on that.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much, Alex, for such a detailed presentation. And thank you. I mean, this guy, he does business, and he's able to break it down into simple business for us. I'd like to ask the rest of the panelists to come on board. I'll just ask you one question and then we can close this session. So Nabalayo and Phil, if you'd come on board, thank you very much. This business is about, this session is about SMEs taking Africa and the world. And Alex has just started by, he's finished rather by explaining about his experience in getting into West Africa, how it has grown their business, but also the challenges that they've had. I want to ask you just one simple question, and both of you can jump in at any point, both Phil and Navalayo. What has been your biggest mental hurdle to scaling from Kenya to Africa?
That's actually a good question. I don't think I think of them as hurdles. I think when you said hurdle, my mind was like, I think I
trying to use a running analogy for you.
Yeah, I think it's more, I would say I see them as opportunities on the flip side. And I would say it's more of information. I would say the key thing is if you don't have access to information, that's like a thing that really limits you. And so when you're thinking of going to a specific market, I think most people would do a Google search and stuff like that. I found a very good support through the She Trades network. There's basically ITC, that's the International Trade Center, has a very good set of tools, trade tools. So there's a market access map, there's an export potential map, and market investment map. They sound very complex, but they are not. These tools are basically aggregating data from around the world. And let's say I want to sell goods to another country. You can literally, using the HS code, find which countries are importing a lot, which ones are not, which ones are things like that. So I would say that information is extremely critical if you're thinking about going to another country. And then I would also say another information source is the bilateral agreements between Kenya and other countries. So you want to go to a place where the government has essentially gone on your behalf and made trade easier. And so we have a lot of trade agreements with countries in Europe, with America. And so you also want to take advantage of those places because the work becomes significantly easier. Phil talked about payment processes systems, how you're going to get your money out of a specific country. So you also need information when you're looking at how to do that. And then essentially now you have to think, okay, how do I get into that market? I think the big challenge for most people has been looking at a market and saying, I need to find a buyer. And I felt like that is, it's a great thing if you have the connections and the information like buyers beforehand. However, if you're just still standing in your living room and you're thinking, how do I find a buyer in country X, which I've never been to, how do I get there? And so I would say the key thing that I have learned, and this is based on my personal experience, is that once you have used all those data sources to identify the market, you have to find a way to be in that market. Basically, provide your own market, because I felt as though waiting for a buyer or someone to contact you is like a sitting duck, whereas you can be more proactive and say, okay, if other business people are coming into Kenya, there must be a way for me as a Kenyan to go into that country. And so I found that as the best way to expand into a country, essentially looking at after, of course, looked at all that data, looking at where the biggest market is, and establishing an entity in that market. That way, you're not really sitting at the mercy of waiting for a buyer, but you have an entry access that gives you as good as a chance as anybody in that country is. So I'd say the biggest challenge is mental, in terms of not having the information and not understanding that sometimes you can't sit and wait for the buyer to come to you. You kind of have to go to that market, figure out how to get into it, because then if there's all these kinds of rules before you open a bank account, the same rules we apply to foreigners here, same rules apply in another country. figure out how to do that. And once you're able to set foot in one of your key markets, you're fair game. You can compete as much as anyone else can. So I say a lot of the challenges I've seen with small SMEs, but again, it's not really a blame. I think it's just a knowledge perspective where you are looking for a buyer. You're looking for a buyer, and I'm like, you can be the buyer, essentially connecting yourself to that market. You're mute.
I was saying thank you for that. We got an Index One answer, from you. And well done. Philip, what are your thoughts? What was your biggest barrier? And I don't know, we're running out of time, but I'll give you a minute to be able to respond to that.
Yes, indeed, we are on the clock here. I'll keep it short and succinct. Actually, what Alex said, I think I need to actually have a coffee with Alex after this, because I think there are so many notes we can exchange, especially with regards to country entry. Nigeria is actually one of the markets that we're actually attempting entry into. And it's what somebody told me, I don't know whether to congratulate you or to commiserate you, because that's a very, very crazy market. But I think for me, the issue is partnerships. In fact, my headline point was taken by Navalayo, and I think that's the biggest issue: access to information. How do other cultures operate? How do other markets operate? What are the do's and don'ts? Something that's normal and ordinary in Kenya may not be acceptable etiquette just across the border in Uganda or in Tanzania, or in Rwanda, Burundi, and those are markets which we actually have presence in. How do people do business here? What's the culture? Secondly, getting partnerships, getting the right people to work with. I think that for us has been a big hurdle. You can have all the bilateral agreements, you can have the right environment, but who are you going into business with? Because in some of these countries, the legislation necessitates that you must have a local partner. Some do. So those are factors that, where do you get these people? People with high ethics, high integrity, people who, don't want to cut corners, people with whom you will not disagree with in future. That's a big issue. And it's not just about rushing into a market. The other issue is capital. I would say capital not as a problem. I think that's what Alex is here to sort out. But the fact that many people think because I don't have capital, I can't go. So that's a mental blockage. One of the things that actually prompted us to go into Uganda was a very Kimchezo road trip I took with some of my friends earlier, even before we went into iPay in a previous company I was working with. We just went to visit a pal of ours who was doing medicine at Makerere. We slept in his room, but our eyes were open. We were in the environment, and you see the country dripping with opportunity for your product. And suddenly from there, the scales start falling off and you realize, actually, I can do this thing. So that's the other thing. The other thing also is about setup. I think Alex mentioned something about Nigeria. There you pay rent 1 year in advance. That's a fact of the matter, right? So there's some countries where it works like that. So the question is, what can you then do to set up easily? Can you go for a virtual office setup? And there are some of those opportunities that you don't have to go the full brick and mortar. So the question is, how can you have an asymmetrical response to a problem that you're facing? And I really encourage entrepreneurs out there, go out of the Kenyan market. I think yesterday one of the panelists said that Kenya is a very small market. 50 million people is not big. Don't think you're big. Don't compare yourself to, the small economies. Compare yourself to the whole continent. You've got to look at your product in terms of scale. That's where wealth is created, in scale. It's good to have a, but it's scale. The last thing I would say, regulation and language. Please get legal advice. Get good, sound legal advice. The last thing you want is a tax problem in a foreign jurisdiction with a regulatory authority in that jurisdiction. Get sound legal advice from the get-go. SMEs, please pay for these services. Don't go in on the cheap. And when I say pay, I'm not necessarily saying, pay top dollar. Get good, qualified people who can help you. people who can help you with cross-border support, people like Alex, companies which are already leveraging continental environments to help you. Don't start from scratch. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's the mistake sometimes we make. Leverage other people's knowledge and expertise to move forward. But please, by all means, go, do. And I think there's some questions which are coming in the chat, Amani. Maybe we'll have time to also take them.
I think just once you get off, you can go ahead and engage with the guys on the chat. Alex, I'm going to just ask you to give a last word because we've run out of time. But I wouldn't want you to leave without having said everything else you wanted to say. So last word, and maybe the question is: should we go outside Kenya and do business and trade with Africa? Is it worth the risk?
All right. So. Yes, we should, but obviously with a lot of strategy. We have seen companies walk into some of the African markets, there's big promise, and then those risks we are talking about materialize. So, maybe there's some changes in policy, there's you are not very clear about, your investment horizon. You walked in without a very good strategy on how are you going to sustain in this market before your business is entrenched in the market and you see a profit. What lead time am I giving myself to be able to look at a payback period? A lot of people want in and out as fast as possible. And I understand everybody wants their return as quick as possible. But by the time you localize yourself, how long will that take? If you look at our friends in the beer industry, in Kenya, you call it Tusker. In Tanzania, you call it maybe Serengeti. In another market, they have really localized themselves so that they reduce the barriers to trying. I was happy to listen to Kandie Phyllis, and she was talking about possibilities of you creating djembes because we tend to import them from Brazil. But then if you went and called your djembe a djembe in Nigeria, you'll have a hard time. So you need to figure out how do you localize the word djembe in Nigeria, because there's a big market for those things, and we are all importing Tramontina and all these things from all over the place. So these are things to think about. If you are building your wealth, you've got to think of your 2, 5, 7, 10, 20-year time frame. Europeans typically play a 25-year game. Okay, so how do you see yourself playing a 25-year game in that market? So get in patiently and have a clear strategy, good partnerships, as we've mentioned. Go and check for, knock the doors of organizations that should support you. Let the embassy know you. Who's the commercial attaché? They need to know you. I see people investing in Kenya. One of the things we have to help with is they come in and did knock the door of people like Interpol or FRC, Financial Reporting Center of the Central Bank of Kenya. So you then send some $20 million here for you to start investing in a project. Now imagine you did this in another country. Nobody knew you. You plugged $20 million there. You have a heartache. So find out the processes, who should help you in governance and give you the right advice so that you're also not working with quacks and your resources are stuck. So those would be the things I observe. Yeah.
I just got a heartache from $20 million, just the mention, not even the process of it. I have to let you, lady and gentlemen, go. Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for your time. There's a lot of questions for you in the discussion tab. So please go ahead and engage with guys on that discussion tab. But guys, also these guys have booths. On your left side, you'll see an exhibition booth. iPay are there, Enda are there, Alex is there. Go and engage with them. There you'll be able to get their contacts there, and you'll be able to engage with them further. I'd also want to ask that if you're happy to share your presentations with us, put them, Alex, Philip, and Navalayo, if you have a document or handout you'd like to share with us, put it in the handout section so that guys can access. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best in your businesses. And Navalayo, I'm still in for that shoe. So, size 10. People are here saying that I cannot run. I run every day from poverty. So I need the shoe for it. All right.
We
See you
encourage
guys.
running in
Now,
all
Thank
forms.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. All right. Cheers. All right.
Bye.
And for the rest of us who are still following on this wonderful conference, the Big Baraza, the hashtag is Big Baraza. You have to communicate, let people know what you're learning. Let's share these insights for other SMEs. We are going into another panel session.
Excellent. I think because of pressure of time, we may just jump straight into it because thank you again for coming. And as I said, because of pressure of time, we may need to just jump straight into it. And I'm very excited by the previous session. I think I've learned far more in that one session than I've done in a long time about how to expand beyond Africa. And so, Carol, let me just start with you. Does an SME need to be registered to leverage the African Free Trade Area? What sort of support is there for the informal sector?
Okay, yes, SMEs are required to formally register their businesses and processes, and possess legal registration and operation licenses, as well as abide to all the tax obligations. And the registration is very crucial to obtaining the relevant export documentation, including certificate of origin and other requirements. However, we note that the informal sector drives much of the Africa's economy and cannot be ignored. So it's about 70% of the Africa economy is informal traders, and a lot of them are women. Some of the driving factors are the high tariffs that partner states and compliance costs. But with ACFTA eliminating 90% of all tariffs, SMEs are better off operating through formal channels, which are more secure, but also because then even partners, stakeholders, government can be able to find them and support them better than when they cannot find them. And so the idea is to really get them more of them registered. So what we've been doing in KEPSA is really working with government to simplify the business registration processes through the one-stop shops, e.g. Huduma centers and through online e-citizen. In addition, government is rolling out Biashara centers targeting SMEs across the country, while KRA is setting up micro and small division to deal with SMEs tax issues. We've also been really pushing government on a Biashara fund. You know, there are all these women fund, youth fund, but we felt that all these women fund and SME and youth fund all target mostly SMEs. And so having a Biashara fund that funds for business is best. And so finally, that has been approved and Treasury is going to implement that. And so we're also training them on tax compliance and other business processes to enable them meet the regulatory requirements. Another option for informal sector is to organize themselves into cooperatives that can trade on their behalf and enhance their bargaining power.
Hi, Manasseh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so to my question, what can the Kenya Association of Manufacturers do to facilitate SMEs to take a full advantage of the African Free Trade Area? And then what can SMEs on this call? How can SMEs on this call benefit from the resources that the association has?
Thank you very much for your question. Kenya Association of Manufacturers has an SME created an SME hub to specifically focus on the growth and development of to facilitate growth and development of SMEs. And this we do by preparing and nurturing the SMEs to be able to access the African markets, first of all through customized capacity building programs and workshops, and providing practical, technical farm level interventions. So we provide these capacity building initiatives for SMEs to prepare them for the African market, because we know that for you to be able to export, be it regionally, continentally, you need product development, and this requires a lot of capacity building. It requires access to credit. It requires that you have quality products and your products meet certain standards. for exports. So we provide linkages with KIRDI, Kenya Institute of Industrial Training, Industrial Research and Development. We provide linkages with the Kenya Bureau of Standards so that they're able to capacity build SMEs on the areas of focus for them to be able to benefit fully from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So we also provide linkages with innovation and patenting. And to implement this, we have sector-specific programs. We know SMEs are diverse across sectors. So our programs are tailor-made for each sector. So in terms of accessing the continental markets, we push for policies and programs that can allow SMEs to access the continental market. We know that for the removal of tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers are important for access of continental markets for SMEs and all other businesses. So CAM is at the forefront of pushing for removal of non-tariff barriers for the manufacturers, specifically SMEs included. And we also push for the lowering of tariffs. As we speak, the AFCFTA is moving towards removal of tariffs at 90% for the non-sensitive commodities. So this will give our SMEs a competitive edge to be able to access the African market. It will also help the SMEs be able to access raw materials and strengthen their input supply, and also strengthen the value chains across the region. So I think in a nutshell, those are the key highlights of what CAM is doing. And of course, for you to on the question of accessing the continental market, we have CAM has been involved in the development of the online platforms that can give information on where there are opportunities. We have the Sokoku Africa, which is developed to help the SMEs access different markets, showcase their products, so that the other buyers from the other continents are able to access. So this, coupled with the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers, I believe are key cornerstones of development of opportunities for SMEs. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. It seems like there's a fair bit of formalization of SMEs and the informal sector to enable them to access the African Free Trade Area. So, Treasurer, I'd like to ask you, you as previously the Director for Trade at the EU Commission, and having been a strong advocate for inter-Africa trade, what is the African Continental Free Trade Area, and why should we be all excited about it?
Thank you very much for inviting me and for your question. Indeed, the African Continental Free Trade Area is exciting because of its ambition, the scope, the design, and the strategy that has come out of the African Union. I think many citizens across the continent know the African Union works on various continental frameworks and strategies. But I think what makes this one different is basically the fact that it is one that is being fast-tracked and is moving into implementation, even as the rules are still being defined. So it is, I think it's it triggers the imagination, the size of this market in terms of the 1.3 billion Africans that are a part of it. Eventually, once all the countries have signed and ratified, of course, you know, we have 54 out of 55 countries already on board, and more are ratifying as we speak. I think the last count was 37 countries. So the political commitment, I think, is not the question. I think for what is really exciting is the opportunities that can be unlocked for Africans to trade with each other, to deepen the integration that has started with regional blocs, such as EAC and ECOWAS and other blocs. It is also important because it's more than just trading in goods. We are all very excited about, made in Africa, but made in Africa products and value chains require a lot of services and other actors that will basically make those products arrive to the consumer in the marketplace. So when we look at it, it involves trade in goods, a protocol on trade in services, investment protocol, an intellectual property rights protocol, competition policy, e-commerce, women and youth. So it is a broadening agenda, and in fact, it's being implemented in phases and negotiated in phases so that we don't wait until the whole package is complete before we can start realizing the benefits. So I think the start of trading also happened from the 1st of January, and what we are seeing is that Africans across the continent are not interested to learn more. What does this rules system entail? What are these tariffs that are being dismantled? The rules of origin, how does that affect my business? So I see that it's also provoking a lot of stakeholders in the private sector and governments to go back and look again at their export strategies and how they can take advantage of this lucrative market. I was happy to hear the previous speakers talking about what Kenya is doing already to venture into that marketplace. And what I can say briefly is that what is important in this marketplace is basically providing the instruments and the practical modalities for trade to happen. And we're happy as the A-Trade Group that we're part of that. We're leveraging digital technologies to support how SMEs can expand this market. And I was so happy to hear my fellow panelists before talking about Sokoku. Sokoku is basically was named by the African Union as one of the Pan-African gateways that will allow it to be easier for SMEs to access this continental market. So I think more could be said about the AFCFTA, but in the interest of time, I will just stop there and say that it is really an open invitation for Africans to explore this market. And for us, as the A-Trade Group, we want to put emphasis on SMEs, women and youth to be beneficiaries, the key beneficiaries, because we have no doubt that the larger players have already positioned themselves and are likely to take advantage of the benefits that come with this market. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Okay, don't go because we've got more questions for you. But Winkate,
Very
good. A question. Now, we already have a regional economic blocks. How do you think the Africa Free Trade Area will mean for these regional blocks, like the East African Community?
Okay, thank you very much for the floor, and thank you very much to the organizers for a much call to have the SMEs understanding what the free trade agreement brings to the table. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was built on the foundations of the regional economic communities. So it does not mean that it is going to nullify or remove the regional economic communities. They are more or less part and parcel of it. So you think of it when you look at the agreement, how it is, you put the AFCFTA underlying, and then you have the regional economic communities, which have different levels of integration. Some have far integrated, for example, if you look at COMESA and SADC, and others have not such similar type of integration like as AMO. So the agreement is also not trying to bring the RECs all to the same level at once. It's acknowledging that those that already have the agreements, those that already have better integration can continue operating above the agreement, while the others now form the basis between themselves. So it now creates room to now put the RECs onto the next level, where we have the integration within the RECs as well as within the intra-REC engagement. So the 8 economic commissions that are actually recognized have now a meeting between the ASCFTA, the ASCFTA Secretariat and the AU to have a framework on the integration that needs to take place between the different recs, so that way we have a harmonization that comes across with the customs, with the payments, with the labor, and all these aspects. So it's not something that's going to be overturned in the next 1 year or two. It's a process in the making, all in all, to bring us to the vision that came with the Abuja Treaty of having a Pan-African economic and monetary union.
That's an excellent answer, and it does mean. I think one of my big concerns, I think personally, is the fact that is a fear that others outside the continent will see the benefit far faster than we ourselves will. And so that brings me back to you, Carol. CAPSA is working to prepare SMEs for the African Free Trade Area. Can you share with us maybe things that you're already doing, maybe some success stories that you're already seeing, and how CAPSA is enabling SMEs in other practical ways to begin to make sure that we're up there, you sort of the first taxi off the ranks to take advantage of this phenomenal opportunity.
Thank you. Just allow me to put off my camera just to have some stable net for now as I'm answering this. First, I think I needed to mention that of the reach of CAPSA. So, because we cover the whole spectrum from the multinationals to the medium and to the small and startups. And then we are a federation of associations, including Kenya Association of Manufacturers and all those other associations, so that we have so that everyone can come together, and then whatever we're doing, we all agree and reach to all. If it's SMEs, then we are reaching all SMEs in all the different sectors, and not one sector. And so, in terms of what we are doing to prepare SMEs for ACFTA, one of the data that we have is that according to the Central Bank of Kenya data, the value of exports to the continent in the first 3 months of 2021 was 70.2 billion Kenya shillings. That is 75% higher compared to the 65.3 billion in the first 3 months in 2020. The total value of exports to the continent in 2020 was 252.68 billion, a 9.07% growth compared to year 2019, and the highest in 8 years. This is despite the COVID-19 disruptions, indicating increased focus on the regional and continental market. So with that data, we said, how do we then prepare SMEs to trade across the continent? One is the policy advocacy to ease the cost of doing business, especially during the COVID-19, improve business and competitiveness, and address regional trade barriers. Examples of policies engaged on include the SME policy, the startup bill, the credit guarantee scheme, the prompt payment policy for VAT refunds and pending bills, promoting Buy Kenya bills. We have partnered with Kenya Export and Promotion and Branding Agency to market made in Kenya products, and this includes SMEs. Because a lot of the products that are made here are from SMEs, and so partnering with Keproba is actually to market those products out of the country and into the region and continental. The second thing we've done is digitalization. So we've partnered with Trademark East Africa to implement an e-commerce booster program that aims to support at least 2,000 SMEs gain digital skills and build capacity to operate in the digital market space as they navigate the new COVID normal. We all know we're in the digital space, the tech revolution, and it will cut a lot of costs for SMEs, setting shop or traveling around the continent, so they can be able to do their business and trade seated in their own homes. The program has 3 components, targeting to onboard SMEs onto existing digital platforms, locally, overseas, e-market platforms, and strengthening the digital marketing capabilities of the SMEs. And what we're telling SMEs, being on the Facebook page, that is not e-commerce. There's more to e-commerce than just having a page on your Facebook. So far, over 2,600 SMEs have expressed interest in the program. And another program that we're doing is a Jira Digital Project that aims to training and linking 2 million youth across Kenya to digital and digitally enabled work by 2022. And this is crucially for those seeking opportunities in the continent, including digital entrepreneurship. A total of 16,670 youth have already been linked to job opportunities in e-commerce, online work, digital marketing, and content creation. The third area that we are targeting for SMEs so they're ready for ACFTA is financing opportunities. So through them, we have an SME resilience and recovery project by offering interest-free loans of up to 1.5 million shillings to SMEs repayable within 6 months. This has been crucial as they seek to diversify opportunities and markets in the wake of COVID-19. Our members, such as the banking industry players, ABSA, Equity Bank, Standard Chartered, among others, have also been providing SME targeted financing to enable them to scale up. The third thing, their fourth thing is facilitating market linkages by organizing B2B forums for SMEs to market their products and also engage potential partners and investors. KEPSA is in the process of establishing an SME club that will be instrumental. We have had a sector, but we thought let's make it more like a club so that will facilitate a lot of these B2B engagements, networking and linkages among SMEs. We've also been conducting training and mentorship sessions for those who've been logging in on Friday morning. We have an average of 400 to 500 SMEs from around the country and even in the region. The last country to join those mentorship programs was actually South Sudan. And these have we bring in experienced business leaders who provide insights on market and business intelligence and tell their stories, because every multinational started as an SME. Every medium organization we know today started as an SME, started as a startup. And so those stories are really, really inspiring to SMEs, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback to continue those. And we have other digital platforms that SMEs can access: the InfoTrade Kenya portal, the Africa Trade Observatory, an online. There's also the tradebarriers.africa online platform, which focuses on identifying and eliminating NTBs, and SMEs can visit the online platform and make their trade challenges known by reporting the NTBs they face. These are the non-tariff barriers. Then the Pan-Africa Payment and Settlement Platform by Africa Export-Import Bank, and one of the other banks that we are partnering with and we have an MOU with is Afri-Exim Bank, and a lot of focus is on SMEs for them to be able to access ACFTA. And so those are some of the things that we are doing to really prepare the SMEs for ACFTA.
Wow, that's incredible. In fact, I don't know if you could just maybe give us I'll probably we'll have a sidebar conversation about all that information that you've given us. Maybe you can submit that to us.
Yes.
Can help us with that. Maybe you can have a copy of all that data. That's a lot, and it's amazing to hear all of this. Personally, I'm quite astounded that there's so much. I think it was yesterday one of the panelists said that part of our problem is we're just not conscious. We're not conscious of the opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's very well illustrated by your presentation. Now, Bwana Manasseh, let me ask you, how exactly does a soap maker, a bed maker, some fashion designer, how does your association help them sell their goods now?
Thank you very much for that question. We engage in seeking market access opportunities. We normally engage other countries in business-to-business forums. We organize trips to other countries to see the market opportunities that exist for our manufacturers. We normally also engage our external partners, embassies, to see, just to establish whether there are opportunities for their institutions on the Kenyan side, and whether there are also opportunities for Kenyan SMEs on the other side. So these are things we do through our CAM consulting agency in collaboration with the SME Hub, and we seek market access opportunities for these kind of businesses. Now, for the regular average SME, if they need to sell to a partner state in the CFTA, there are those online portals that provide information on existing market opportunities. They provide information on who is selling and who is seeking perhaps maybe inputs. So these are the kind of platforms that we sensitize our members on, and we encourage them to utilize these platforms to get information on where they can engage in business across the continent. And we also engage the financiers. We engage the financiers, financial service providers to be able to provide credit opportunities for SMEs, because sometimes the quantities required of commodities across borders might not be attainable for the SMEs. So we also sensitize them on how to work together, issues like coming together as SMEs, and so that you're able to meet the volumes that are required by the importer, by the your partner across the border, and then ensuring that the standards are uniform for whichever product you're selling. Because if you are coming together in order to meet the volumes, you need to have a standard commodity across the board, so that there is consistency in whichever product you are producing. So we also influence the regulatory environment to encourage the exports. So we work a lot to reduce, working towards the reduction of cost of doing business, and also issues of ease of doing business. That is both locally and regionally and across the borders. So whenever issues arise of our members being having challenges with the cost of doing business, we normally seek the counsel of the State Department for Trade, and find out how these issues can be resolved. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the issue of standardization and quality control, because of course that's a pretty big one, I think, across the spectrum of SMEs. Now, to Treasure, you let's talk ICT and the African Free Trade Area. What are you doing in it and how would you define the role of ICT in this incredible space called African Free Trade Area?
Thank you. In fact, it is just one of the most critical enablers. I think we have seen with this perfect storm of COVID-19, the start of trading of the AfCFTA and digital technologies and digital transformation coming together. The role of ICTs are very important. And I think that what we are in fact, we're learning a lot from Kenya in terms of how ICTs can make a huge difference to people's lives. But what our entry point is as an organization is we are providing e-government services as well as e-commerce solutions to the marketplace, because what we have understood is that countries across the continent are at varying stages of preparing for the best utilization of technologies to provide basic information and services to citizens. I was very, happy to see online that, Kenya, in terms of your customs procedures, you've gone paperless. Some countries are still at the early stages of thinking about this and planning. So our interest as the A-Trade Group is how can we accelerate and bring countries to move forward at a faster pace, obviously not together, but also learning from each other's experiences. And the whole aspect of the ease of doing business being facilitated by technology is a key part of what we are doing. And we do that through country programs that we are rolling out successively around the continent. And but the e-commerce space is actually probably the most exciting, because it is speaking to a lot of the issues we're talking about today. Our research told us that across the continent, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, there are three chronic issues we haven't been able to solve successfully up until now. One is the know-how to do business. What do I mean? Of course, people are trading on the continent every day, but the difference is that what we feel is needed is to change the mindset from doing kind of traditional survival business to a competitive business mindset. And so we have designed a program which is delivered online called Changing the Mindset, which basically prepares SMEs to move beyond just their comfort zone of their community or their city where they are trading, to actually look further and look at opportunities across the border. And then that is the capacity building opportunities within Sokoko, because we call it a digital capacity building machine, are that we can partner with various actors, including hopefully some of the stakeholders in this event, to look at how we can take digital content, put it on our AE Learn platform, and make it accessible across the continent. And we are working in 4 languages because of the African Union, but we obviously could expand further. We would love, for example, to see products in Kiswahili on our platform in the future. So the first aspect is the know-how to do business. The second is lack of access to affordable finance. All SMEs are challenged in this way at one stage or another on their journey. And so what we are basically providing is a vetting process through Sokoko, which will provide a complementary information and data that will support the application when an SME wants to approach a commercial financial institution for finance. And this is something we actually have understood we need to advocate for also at the policy fora. And this is why we are working with the stakeholders of private sector associations at the continental regional level, as well as the national level, where we, as much as possible, because that's where it really matters, to be able to see what we can do working with the ministers of finance, the central banks, development finance institutions, to really unlock this missing link. Because if you look at the experience of SMEs in terms of lending in Africa, it takes on average 6 weeks to 3 months for an application to be processed. I know that it could be faster in Kenya, but on the rest of the continent, this is the experience. And then after that, 50% of them may get approved. Whereas in India and China, it takes, an application is considered within hours, 5 to 6 hours, you have the response. So I know that we are moving forward in terms of digital technologies, but ICT needs the enabling regulatory framework for it to work. And so the aspect of policy advocacy and working with an ecosystem of actors to push in the same direction is extremely important. The third aspect of our work, so beyond financial inclusion, which we are very passionate about, it's the aspect of digital inclusion itself. We know that, half of the, mobile penetration is, has been really has accelerated at a great pace on the continent. But what information I have is that out of about 1.4 million cell phones, only half of them are smartphones, which means that the digital platforms we're talking about for B2B, for e-commerce trading, will not be accessible to a lot of people in the rural areas, people who need this access to market to get out of COVID-19 challenges. So we are working on advocacy and finding solutions for the digital inclusion. And we have actually a product that we want to bring to market, which is a solar-powered laptop. And this, we think, is not a silver bullet, but it could make a major difference and a contribution to make it possible for more Africans to be online to trade together. So I will basically just end to say that it's the aspect of innovation that I think is exciting in the ICT space. And we see the youth as being very dynamic, and much has been said. And I think Kenya is one of the regional centers. We have Nigeria, South Africa, and other larger economies where we're seeing a lot of activity in terms of applications coming forward, venture capital finance being levied. But we think we need as a continent to do more, and we need to have this shared prosperity model. So what we are doing on a practical level is partnering with the African Union to prepare for the second Intra-African Trade Fair in Kigali, where we, as a trade group, are going to be managing a youth startup pavilion. And we have a global competition for youth startups that we're running, and we want to share this information with stakeholders so that at least 150 to 200 youth can access that space and be able to basically leapfrog and go to the next level in terms of expanding their business ideas or business operations across the continent. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. That's amazing. So to Wingate, let's talk about movement of labor. The African Free Trade Area has the protocol for the trade in services. And what do you think, what are your views around the question of both movement of labor and selling of services across the new frontier of the free trade area?
Yes, thank you. So this also ties in back to the discussion we were having earlier with regards to the regional economic communities, because this will tie into how that would happen. You're also looking at the language aspect, the cultural aspect, you're looking at the policies, you're looking at also the skill set and the research that is being done and the movement of those type of people across the continent. So the protocol on trade and services is to foster and create an open, rules-based, transparent, inclusive and integrated single services market in Africa. But we can all attest that because services is not something that is tangible, that can easily follow through, it's been a complicated negotiation. So the negotiation is not made on listing which type of services, because as has been highlighted with the previous speaker, with digitalization, e-commerce and everything, this is becoming broader and broader, the types of services that can be provided across the board. So they are more or less looking at the protocol from the way the service is exchanged. So there are 4 particular modes that they look at. So the first one is from the territory of one member to another member. So that could be cross-border supply. The other, or the second point, would be in the territory of one member state to the service consumer of another member. So that could be consumption. So that is an example with applications. It could be based in Kenya, but then it's being used all across East Africa. Then the other is by a service supplier from one member through commercial presence in territory of another member. So this is commercial presence, again, similar to what I gave before. And the last mode is by a service supplier of one member through the presence of natural persons or members in the territory of another member. So this is where you asked about the movement of people. So if, for example, you have a surgeon coming in from Egypt, going to perform surgery in Ghana, does their license still be accepted in Ghana? And what duration of time do they spend there to be considered like being given like those types of visas? And this also cuts across to what you're seeing with the AU putting across the African passport. That will make it much easier for us to move across boundaries without having to have the issue of visas. If you look internally, it's not easy to travel within the different African countries. So we are seeing different regional communities already pushing for that, or already advanced with that. For example, with the East Africa community, where you can even use your ID or passport to cut across. But not all recs are like that, and that is now a movement that is being pushed to have other economies do the same thing, and therefore make it easier to do intra-rec movement. One other thing that maybe I can highlight on that is also when it comes to the services is having an understanding, like having the representatives understand what we mean by the services sector, because it's the most underrepresented. In Africa, we only have 13%, and then the rest is 83% that we are exporting. So what needs to be done, particularly, for example, with chambers of commerce, with other stakeholders, to capacitate as well as push for the advocacy of the digitalization as well as the infrastructure. I'll give one example with telecommunications, because among the different services that are being negotiated right now, there are 5 priority areas, and that is transport, communications, tourism, financial, and business services. So this is, again, coming back to the complexity of trying to decide which ones are we going to negotiate. So they decided, let's go to these 5, and countries are doing on an offer basis. So they look at the positive increment to the economies. What are they missing in terms of services? And then they make that as an offer across the board, either to another country within the ASCFTA or to a region, whichever way. But it's it's pertinent for it to be transparent so that everybody knows that this is what the country is requesting for our services. And therefore, when they put out their tariffs later in June, you're able to know which countries are requesting for what and which services can then be put out across the board. So for us, as Chambers of Commerce, we are trying to collect this information, particularly with Chambers of Commerce and Industry, working together with other different trade facilitators to enable the movement of people across, even the same with the goods, trying to make it easier with certificates of origin as well, to make it easier for people to not only move their goods, but also move themselves. And as representatives on the Pan-African table of negotiations, to be able to push together as well the governments to see that services need to be invested in, and this can also push forward the economic development of the continent. Thank you.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. I can imagine, of course, we live in an age of, given that we're living in the information age, the movement, the mobility of labor is actually an international phenomenon now. And maybe for another day, we'll have a conversation around how does the free trade area going to address the international mobility of labor, because I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. But now, so in closing, can I just ask? I'll ask each of you panelists to just think of one word, maybe let's say 2 words that you'd like to say, or you'd like to characterize the future for SMEs under the African free trade area. So starting with Carol, think what are the 2 words you would think of that would say epitomizes the opportunity for SMEs in the free trade area? Just 2 words.
The opportunities are limitless.
Unlimited opportunities.
Unlimited opportunities.
Excellent. Manasseh, 2 words?
Yes. Mine might not be 2, but I think there'll be a lot of innovation, innovativeness in engaging in the AFCFTA.
Innovation, okay.
Yes.
To Treasure, 2 words to describe opportunities.
I would say transformational. Just 1 word.
Transformational. Just 1 word. That's very good. That's excellent. And Winkate?
Mine would say regional chains.
Say that again?
I'll say regional chains. That they don't think their supply, now that the market is open, just think within your country, but look at what else you can find within the region or even the whole continent and get your product out to the rest. Yeah.
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you very much, panel members. That was a really, really interesting one. I just got thinking that just from this conversation, I almost wish there was a monthly forum where all of you could come on board and you could ask questions like this, because clearly there's a huge need for knowledge for us to understand as SMEs what the opportunities are, and the fact that going forward, the rest of the world is not asleep. It's not sleeping. And now that we've created the largest free trade area on earth, we better get on to taking advantage of it and making sure that we benefit the most. Others, we may find ourselves again looking as others from other countries and other continents walk into our backyard and begin to take opportunities. So thank you very much. I'm extremely encouraged from everything I've heard in terms of the measures and things that we are doing to fix and to make sure that the African SME comes out on top. And so with that, Manamaranga, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Wahoro, and thank you so much to our guests. What a wealth of information. My word, Mr. Wahoro, would be emancipation. I think the opportunities that come from the free trade area is just emancipation. You know, I think it's about time Africa became decolonized economically. And I think this this is a great way for us to get decolonized economically. So emancipate, in the words of a street philosopher that I value very much and listen to him a lot, he says, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And, I agree with that philosopher. Kate, Caro.
You speak to my generation.
I'm speaking to your generation. I'm not too far back. Kate, Caro, Manasseh, thank you so much, and Wahoro for this. Caro, I think the challenge to keep this information out there is yours. To the conversations around the free trade area with the SMEs, what you're doing every Friday. This is I think you have the opportunity to keep a conversation like this alive, and we're looking forward to you doing a lot more of that. But thank you for all the work you're doing with KEPSA. Thank you, Manasseh, for the work you're doing with the Association of Manufacturers, and Winkit with the Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I will just introduce the next session, and then we can all leave together. For the speaker, Kagoro, who is coming via video to speak to us about how we can learn from African villages. Just give it a second. I think the technical team is trying to get that up and running. In the meantime, what are you learning? What are you hearing? I love the conversations that have been going on the Discuss panel, and especially when the free trade area conversation was happening. I want to hear what you're hearing. I want to hear what you're learning. Share that with us. I don't know if the tech team can tell us if you're ready to run.
I'm Brian Tamuka Kagoro. I'm a recovering lawyer, international economic relations lawyer, but I am a practicing Pan-Africanist. I wake up every morning trying to find solutions to Africa's development challenges and opportunities. The key strengths of African villages are relationship, shared vision, shared values, and co-created solutions. And if you think about a village as a space or a place that's physical, that's spiritual, that's cultural, that's intellectual, social, or economic, you'll realize that what drives the relationship in each village, and you see, you have to remember that our villages did not have courts of law, did not have constables or police officers running around, did not have these complex written constitutions, yet there was a measure of order, there was a measure of mutuality and of humanity. It's because the idea of shared wealth or shared outcome and shared values drives our villages. And the second thing that we have to remember that in terms of production in the village, the production was always outcome focused. It was dialogic, right? It was not individualistic. It was collaborative. And that it was also actuated by a sense of equitable distribution. So this shared contribution to creating shared wealth. But it was sustainable. Whether you're looking at sharecropping, the way we dealt with livestock, the way we dealt with crops, even in pastoralist communities, right? It was earth-friendly. And then there was a component of mentorship. We didn't have big schools where we took people to train them. You were trained on the job. You became an artisan. You learned to rear sheep. You learned to raise goats. You learned skills that people are struggling nowadays to transfer. So this idea of mentorship and transference of skills, it was intergenerational. The three key principles that you take away that are critical for anyone in business from a village, crowd-based solutions work best. That idea of a partnership, which is based on, I said, shared values, mutual accountability, and a sense of co-created solutions builds that mutuality. And the third principle is that co-managed and maintained, that collective responsibility leads to greater sustainability. So each must bear responsibility for sustaining common assets and as well as shared interests. There is not in the history of the world any enterprise or any state or civilization that has grown without being impelled by a clear culture, a clear sense of being, of becoming, and of belonging. Think about Americans talking about making America great again. This is a multiplicity of very diverse people who were taken from colonies and dumped in America. They found Native Americans whom they displaced at a great cost. And yet all these people, all those diversities, whether they're Italians, they're Jews, they're Irish, they talk of building this culture that has impelled how they engage the rest of the world. The rest of the world engages you as an entrepreneur based on where you come from, not purely on the basis of your skill. The rest of the world engages you within your own locale and invests in you based on your level of self-belief and self-confidence. And that therefore, given the size of our countries, they are economically non-viable as single entities, no matter how outstanding their performance may be in GDP terms. It therefore means that without aggregating our collective value, creating value chains that are beneficial to us in a mutually inclusive way, that's what we call in Pan-Africanism unity, regional integration. If you don't have that collective approach, you'll be nitpicked by China, by Kuwait, by Iran. And for instance, you see the one country, Iran or Russia, calling all our leaders, Russia, Africa. How is it that one country has a summit with a continent with 1.3 billion people and 59 nations? It's the lack of self-belief, the lack of understanding of our own value. What is that value? Notwithstanding the fact that we have countries with over 400 ethnic groups, that we are so diverse religiously, so diverse culturally, and even linguistically, we have one shared destiny. And that destiny is that the rest of the world always treated us as their property, that they could come, take away as they please from Africa. And we have one common destiny. Our development requires that we share resources, requires that we share solutions, requires that we harvest our collective identity for our collective self-development and sustainable self-development so that we become a voice in the rest of the world. If we come together, for example, at the moment without developing, our collective economy may be smaller than the GDP of California, or sometimes some of the firms like Elon Musk's firms. But if we come together and we look at value adding to our goods, we look at creating regional and national value chains, that is the essence of Pan-Africanism, self-reliant and mutually self-reliant growth. That means nationalism, which confines you into a colonially created nation state, makes you non-viable politically, non-viable socially, non-viable economically. Any right-thinking African that wishes to become a critical player in the globe must first become a critical African. If you are a lizard in Africa, you can't be a crocodile in the global market. And it is as simple as that thinking. A successful African business is a business whose values, whose approach and mode of production, whose accumulation criteria and approach is not inconsistent with the values of where that business comes from. Only unsuccessful business are those which make super profits and have no soul, that make super profits have no reference to the environment, that make one individual obscenely wealthy and has no benefit to the collective, the humanity, that cannot outlive the moment of that super wealthy entrepreneur. A successful African business harvests what I refer to as the quintessential lesson of the village: shared values, shared wealth, and also it develops its context so that it does not win alone. And that's the issue, really, that success is not measured on the basis of net profit. It's measured on the basis of a combination of net impact, net profit, and the culture that you bring that's able to replicate and reproduce in a sustainable way. Otherwise, what you have is a copycat of an American or European business. The African way requires a dialogic approach, outcome approach, intergenerational approach. So you create an entire new culture of doing things that builds confidence, that develops where you are. It's possible to have people making super profits and then leaving half their time in Dubai because they have not built healthcare here, leaving half their time elsewhere because they have not built infrastructure. Just the path from their office to the home is so terrible. Living in fear of criminals who are increasing because they have not invested in creating employment, the things that build the ecosystem of success. Otherwise, we should not conflate, not in Africa, super profits with success. Individual brilliance that's seasonal with success. It's about building businesses that last, building businesses that are great, and their greatness is derived from the principles of the village. I think there is a radical paradigm shift informed by three things: being deliberately strategic, being intentional, and number three, if you like, being informed. The one thing we must not do, I'll come to what we must do, is sell Africa on the basis of raw materials, of flora and fauna. Come and see the big, come and invest in money. Partly because the greatness of Africa is in its human capital. If you represent Africa not as a net value place, but as a net extraction place, then you are misrepresenting Africa. If you represent Africa purely as an opportunity for outsiders, you are misrepresenting Africa. If you represent Africa, however, as a potential solution, because this is the mindset that African SMEs, this is the mindset that African entrepreneurs need to have. Every local idea, from the telephone to the mobile phone to the light to the aeroplane, was once a local idea. Is the self-belief that says, if I go out looking for capital and investment, I am not looking for charity. I am not opening myself and my continent to exploitation. I am not only seeing solutions as coming from outside into the continent. I'm going out there looking where possible for technology transfer without compromising intellectual property rights of what we're developing. I'm going out there perhaps looking for opportunities to invest in those other countries. I mean, gone are the days in this world where SMEs should only think that some European or Asian or Latin American will come and invest in our businesses to grow them. I think we must be getting capital so that we're able to get to invest in those economies as well. So the representation of Africa must be multidimensional. Multidimensional in the way we represent African humanity, we represent African confidence, we represent African collectivity. But you can't represent what you don't know. And the danger with most of our people is that the creation under colonial rule of tribal trust lands or Bantustans created a Bantustan mentality so that we don't know beyond what the colonialists wanted to know, which is the confines of our national boundaries. The opportunity of this moment with technological advances, with the network platform such as been created by this big Baraza, it's important to learn each other it's important to understand opportunity and leverage. It's important to also understand how we network in order to engage outsiders so that there's no race to the bottom. Someone is going to Burundi, someone from Kenya, someone from Malawi, competing for external capital. Of course you'll be exploited. So that representation has to be united, has to be collective, and with a clear understanding of the spectra within the value chain and of certain things that we're able to do. So I always say to people, I run a Pan-African consultancy. I have people in Senegal, I have people in Mauritania, I have people in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and elsewhere. And I always say, if there is an opportunity, it cannot be done by people from one country only, because it would be disastrous to harvest only unidirectional knowledge from one context. Our diversity is what makes us strong. We are very strong. So if you represent a weak Africa, you're not representing Africa. You are representing your appetite to make profit and live a European type life. If it is about development of Africa and becoming a genuine player in the global economy, you have to shift as an entrepreneur. You have to shift as an African. Your skin color is one badge. The minute you arrive, they don't think that you are competent, you are capable. Even if you come from the best universities and work for the biggest firms, they may not think you're honest. So instead of grappling and struggling to prove individual credibility, do scale. I always tell people, whether they're in business, in sports, or in arts and culture, establish mastery over what you do and excellence in the execution of the small thing that you are doing. Mastery means amass as much knowledge about what you are doing. We often panic at not having capital, but our biggest handicap is not knowing sufficiently enough, not doing enough research to understand our field, the competition that's out there, and the possibilities that are there. So I would say to that person, you can be, but establish mastery. And number two, network. It is very important that sometimes capital follows ideas, and that's oftentimes actually. And people in the village, I said, we follow relationships. Build relationships first, because without a diverse set of relationships of people who are doing things similar that you reach out to, you are unlikely to crawl out of a village or a city even. The people who in this conference were talking about their success, they may have talked about their ingenuity. They may have talked about the deployment of technology, but the one constant in all of them, and amongst all of them, is relationships. The networks they were able to build open doors to accessing markets, accessing capital, and also growing. But I think the person in a remote village or county needs much more than themselves. Those of us who work for development finance institutions or assistant need to know risk capital sometimes is better for people in remote areas than traditional capital that we make available. Risk capital means we believe that you will succeed. It is possible that you will fail. We're willing to take the risk with you. And these times are characterized by diversity, unpredictability, ambiguity, and phenomenal opportunity. And the critical challenge is how to survive the tides of exogenous and endogenous shocks. There will be winners and losers. You know, there will be unfair competition. There will be dumping from some. There will be the question of competitiveness and corruption, the governance of the whole ecosystem. It essentially means that we're dealing with much more than business factors. We're dealing with policy. We're dealing with politics. We're dealing with culture. Amongst and within our countries, the culture of doing business is different. So as we talk about networking across countries and cultures, business culture, an African business culture needs to emerge. That's mutually accountable, but that's mutually sustainable amongst us. And we have to be impelled by two principles: do no harm. And it's important because it's possible for SMEs from Egypt, from Kenya, from Nigeria, and the other big countries, and South Africa, to do well in this context. And then they become or think they are the measure of how well the Continental Free Trade Agreement or some other framework is performing. the selfless understanding that a person in Burundi, in Central African Republic, a person in the small island states, requires us to do much more than compete with them, but to make available some of the platforms that we're building in the better performing countries is key. Otherwise, what we will have is we'll replicate the problem we're trying to solve with the AFCFTA, which is dominance by Europe, by Asia and co, onto the continent, and will create hostility. And we don't want, that's why the principles of the village are key. It's commonwealth based on shared values, and with a commitment to do no harm, but to also assuming collective responsibility based on differentiated but equitable input by everybody. Thank you.
Brian Tamuka Kagoro.
So my name is Dr. Masi Nyanchama, and we run an imaging consultancy firm located in Kiambu town that's called KDIS Imaging, from the name Kiambu Diagnostic Imaging Services, and we rebranded recently to KDIS Imaging. First of all, who thought we'd have a pandemic that hit so hard? And running the business was on so many different facets, right? You have the psychological angle, because we're in healthcare. It means that even the people working within the business are at risk of the diseases, all right? So it meant working with a skeleton staff. The other thing is access to the equipment. For example, if you have equipment breakdown, usually within 72 hours, you already have it shifting. But remember now that the cargo flights were stopped. So if you lose or if you have a broken spare part and you need to import, what used to take you 3 days to get into the country, takes you 3 weeks. So you not only lose current business when the machine is down, but you also lose future business. People got scared of going to the hospital. So if they're scared of going to the hospital, guess what happens? Then they don't want to be seen. And the ones that you see are coming late. Meaning that had you caught them earlier, then perhaps you'd have been better off in helping them. Because we run a business that also helps people. It's not just about the money. So you find, because healthcare, people could not afford, a lot of people had lost jobs. So if they were on insurance, now they're cash payers, they're paying out of pocket, the economy is not doing well. So you're having also people not being able to afford healthcare. And that's why you're like, you wish that they could find a way that healthcare would actually be more affordable. Oh, they've been awesome. Yeah, Archer Digital have been awesome. I think I stumbled on them. It was rather serendipity. I met, I think, Alex online, and I think he was making a presentation. And then, of course, they came and assessed our business. And it was not only Archer Digital, there was also alternate doors consulting on the human resource. Yeah, so it's not just their contribution to the business, but they also enable you to see the business from a different angle. And the other thing that with the pandemic is being able to, when you have a business, like having a car and driving a car, when you get out of the car and look at it from an external view, then you're able to pick out what's wrong with it than when you're just constantly driving it. So basically working on the business rather than in it. Yeah.
Wow, what a session we had with Mr. Kagoro, and talking about Pan-Africanism, talking about, the Commonwealth based on shared values. It seems to be, again, in a sense, serendipity. What we just said about emancipating ourselves. How can one country, Russia, summon an entire continent, that was such great conversation, and thank you, Kagoro, for doing that with us. We've come to the end of this conference, and just as we come to a close, I want us to be able to talk to a couple of Sandbox experts and just have them help us just hear what we've had. And I want you to tell me, what have you had in the last 2 days? What has been striking for you? What are you taking out of this big Baraza? Is it that we can go to Africa? Is it that we need to shout about ourselves? Is it that we can have this commonwealth based on shared values? What are you taking home with you? Please put it in the discussion group. I'm just waiting for an upload to happen so we can get into the next session. It will be the last, what will be really just the last session of just unpacking some of the things we've had, and then we can close this big Baraza and start on the process for many other small mini Barazas. So just stay tight, but let me hear what you've had and just keep it on the discussion page going on right here. Mr. Paul and Stephanie, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Very well, thank you. So I just want you to tell me quickly what you guys do for at the Sandbox as Sandbox experts, and then quickly you can tell me what you've been able to pick up. What's been your big takeout from the conference? We'll start with you, Stephanie. Tell us a little about what you do in the Sandbox, and then what your takeout has been.
Great, thank you, Amani. So my name is Stephanie Goku, and I am the founder and managing partner at Upscale Consulting. And what we do there is we work with entrepreneurs in reviewing their businesses and packaging them and promoting them to access finance. So we are the resident investor readiness experts at the Sandbox, and it would be nice to have conversations. And especially now that we are talking about scaling to the continent, I believe that is a conversation that for anyone who would be looking into that, we could be able to engage and see how to package your businesses for better access to finance.
All right, fantastic. Tell me, Stephanie, what has been your big takeout from the big Baraza?
Wow, it has been amazing. There's so much that I've picked, even for myself. I remember this was an SME conversation by SMEs, so I too have benefited from it. So the bigger conversation is around strengthening African economics through enterprise development. And this we see is gonna create job. There's going to be job creation. There's going to be boost in incomes, increase in exports, and of course boost in wages. So I go back to what the CEO Sandbox Joram shared, and just thinking through the opportunities and the numbers that he shared, and for sure the opportunities are immense. And we just need to be able to know how to plug into such opportunities. So what stood out for sure is that this lack of information, and some platforms have been shared where we can be able to leverage and get that information. There's a SOCO, we have ITC, the bilateral agreements, and all other sources of data that we can be able to get this information. Again, thinking on how to scale. What are the strategic partnerships that we can be able to plug in and be able to scale into the continent? We have, a lot of resources from the SME enablers like the KEPSA, CAM, and others who are really offering great platforms for SMEs to be able to scale. When we are talking about access to market, access to finance, access to information and capacity building, conversations, these platforms are able to be able to provide this information. Having said that, well, it's a great conversation, but it's one thing having this information and another thing altogether being able to apply this information just to see how to position ourselves for the Africa continental, free trade area. And there was a conversation by Tresha, I remember, on mindset. And sometimes we get stuck because of the kind of mindset that we have.
So thinking about having a growth mindset, and I'll just leave us with this acronym, growth. So we want to think about what goals from this conversation we are going to set for ourselves to be able to grow. What is our current reality? Where we at? And then next would be what opportunities or options do we have in our businesses to be able to serve? And then what are we willing to do, or what would be our way forward? And then we also need to give ourselves timelines. And that's it. Lastly, there is likely to be help that we need to be able to move forward. So let us develop the growth mindset and see how really we are going to be able to leverage all the opportunities, the information that we have, so that we can be able to scale into the continent.
Wow, I love that, and thank you so much for sharing that. Your acronym is interesting. What are the goals, realities, opportunities? What are you willing to do? What are the timelines, and what is the help needed? Thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing that insight. Mr. Paul Karingithi, what is your big takeout? Tell us what you do at the Sandbox. What does your business do at the Sandbox, and then what your takeout is?
Okay, so I'm the PR expert here at the Sandbox, and what we do is we help brands and SMEs be able to tell their story, because we say you need to be known, to be heard, and to be seen. So from the takeout, and I really love what Stephanie has said, I really like that acronym at the very end. There's been amazing conversations that have gone in over the last 2 days, yesterday and today. And I can start with yesterday. I really loved the conversations around being an SME and how the SME plays in just the ecosystem of the country, what the government is doing, some of those initiatives that the CAS even outlined in her speech. I was hearing for the very first time. And it's very good to hear that, of course, the government is doing something, and maybe sometimes it's not told as much. Maybe they should take our services. We don't hear those initiatives, and it's good to hear those initiatives and hear, hey, government is doing something. Also, the panel that definitely had some of the other regulators, CAK, KRA. I was very happy that KRA was in the panel telling us, okay, from a tax perspective, what are we doing? What are the initiatives they've done? A lot of us SMEs are very afraid of KRA because they are the big green monster that can attack your team. But they came in here, and that discussion was a very good discussion, because they look at people now. They sound like people you can actually reach out and say, now, here, what do we do? Or, what is the one thing that we need to do? There was also the panel for talking about policy, and I liked what Frida said yesterday, that sometimes as SMEs, we need to get together so that we're also able to give feedback to the government in a more organized way. We're able to then say, these are the things we want the government to do for us, be able to affect policy. Because if we don't affect policy, we'll always be reacting after the policy and the statements and everything has already been decided by the powers that be. But we actually have power. With us, being over 90% of the people who are helping grow the economy, we have a lot of power. And I think what we need to do is come together. Now coming to today's conversations, how do we then go into Africa? The conversations by the businesses that have gone before, ENDA and IPay and Moran Capital, talking about some of those markets we've gone into and how they've been able to go into those markets, but also outlining some of those challenges would be, currency issues. How do you even get your money out of a market? How do you expand into that market? Where do you start? Where do you get the information? Very good content right there, because those are places we should start if we're ever going to do anything about the Africa Free Trade Agreement and, expand out of just our home market and help even other SMEs in other parts of Africa. Then I like the conversation by the other associations, the PAM, KEPSA, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, just outlining what AFTA is about. I feel it has been talked about, but this panel actually gave me even more knowledge. If I want to engage and start going into new markets? What do I need to know? What are the rules? If I'm providing a service, where is that classified? What are the non-tariff barriers that I need to be aware of? So that then when I'm starting, I know I'm like, how do I then operate and go into another market? And one of the things that was told, my output for today was actually, how do we get into partnerships? Because sometimes we feel like we need to go into another market and invent the wheel. But sometimes we need to go into those markets and get partnerships that can help us enter those markets. And for me, that was my key for today.
Wow, thank you, Paul Karingithi. Thank you, Stephanie. I just want to ask you one more thing, and then we can bring this to a close. What is the one thing you want to tell SMEs after this information? And your message to the SMEs in the world. We'll start with you, Stephanie. Just what is that encouragement, that inspiration that you want to give to the SMEs of the world today?
Thank you. My encouragement would be, we have seen the three businesses who did their presentation today, and that for sure tells us that it is possible to be able to scale into the continent. I personally was very inspired by their stories. So we need to just be able to understand that and know that for sure the opportunities are there, and secondly, we just want to be able to know how to position ourselves so that we can also be able to partake these opportunities. And where there are challenges, there's lack of information. There's a lot of there's a lot of conversation on how to be able to get this information. So just be able to find out how do you position yourself to get this information so that you can be able to scale up. So it is a time to arise as Africans and be able to trade among ourselves in the continent.
All right, fantastic. And Paul, I'm struggling to call you Paul. Paul, what is your message to the world?
I think for me, it's just to tell SMEs, everyone has a story. And sometimes we are very humble and we don't want to tell our stories or tell even where we are in business. But that is what positions you. If people don't know you, they'll never come to you for a service. So my parting shot would be, tell your story. It's unique. It is by you. Tell it to as many people as possible. You will be humble when you reach. And also visit our booth at John's Backyard so we can help you how to tell your story.
All right, fantastic. The conference has come to a formal end. Please stay online. You can mute your mics, Paul and Stephanie. Please mute your mic, Stephanie, for me. Fantastic. So the conference has come to an end. Don't leave just yet, because as we come to a closing end, I want to be able to do something really special. But first, I want to be able to give a shout out to every person who has been with us for the last 2 days, or even if you're just here today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this has been useful for you. I hope you've been able to glean something that you can take home with you, you can take to your business. There are some fantastic booths that you must check out. You understand that information is power, knowledge is power, and we're learning some of the things that we didn't know we could do with our businesses. We didn't know that were available for Africa and for us to scale to Africa, for example. So go and visit the exhibition booths. That tab is on your left. Thank you for all of you who've shared your business cards, who've shared a little blurb about your business in the discussion page. That's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. Share, shout about your business. You must visit this booth for solutions for your SMEs. But I want to do something special right now. I want to ask all the guys that are in the backstage to come up, to come in front. Come in front. The team from the Sandbox, please come in front right now. Come to the stage. Let me see if I can. Yeah, fantastic. I want you to come on stage, all of you. Please put your mics, put your cameras on. Put your cameras on. We want to see all of you. Everyone that's backstage, Mona, Joram, everyone that's backstage there. Yes, we want to see all of you. I will know that we have the full team once Joram is on board. So, Joram, please come. All right, but basically what I want to do is very simple. I want to clap for you guys. Well done. 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 Very proud of you. Very, very, very proud of you. I'm told I'm muted. I don't know if you can hear me. But yeah, okay, fantastic. So well done. Very proud of all of you, the Sandbox team, for putting together the very first ever conference, Big Baraza for SMEs. Very first ever. Well done. You guys should be very proud of yourselves, and I'm looking forward to how this becomes bigger and bigger every year. Joram, you're a superstar, and your team is made of all superstars. I want to say God bless you. As you come to a close, ladies and gentlemen, look at the Sandbox SNDBX, look at the Sandbox on all social media. Go into the Big Baraza website, engage with guys, go onto the exhibition booths here, get solutions for your businesses, for your SMEs, and I can't wait to hear your stories of resilience and growth and scale next year. God bless you. Have a great afternoon. And one more time, be prosperous and well done, Sandbox. Well done.